Okay, y'all probably noticed we are right back at it. We are right back to getting Dynasty videos every single day. Hopefully y'all been enjoying them, and I promise you, I'm getting you a video every single day from Monday to the start of the 2022 season. Y'all know there's nothing I enjoy more than Dynasty Fantasy Football. One bad thing about the regular season is we have to spend way too much attention on our regular fantasy football channel. We don't get to focus in on what I truly enjoy, which is Dynasty. But let's get this link out over there on Patreon to have some people join this mock draft with us. It's going to be a 12-team Superflex Dynasty startup mock draft. And I know a lot of people are probably going to be frustrated based on the fact that this is Superflex. I hear you. Trust me, I get it. I know everybody wants to come out. Everybody wants to get some one quarterback leagues going. My issue is, if you play in a one quarterback league, you can watch a Superflex startup draft and you can take a ton away from that. Because, I mean, in a one quarterback format, all you have to do is drastically move those QBs down the board and you see the draft board. But in a Superflex league, you can't really transition a one quarterback draft to Superflex. I mean, if you play Superflex and I get a one quarterback draft going for you, that's not going to help at all. So yeah, we're going to keep on going through and we're going to keep on focusing on Superflex Dynasty Fantasy Football. Also, doesn't hurt that that is my favorite way to play. And crap, we almost did not get a team in here. We almost lost our spot. Let's switch this over. I was going to have to boot someone just so we could get in. Girthquake got in here. Girthquake claimed the 101. We got a lot of regulars out here from Patreon. I mean, I'm sure that the majority of y'all recognize almost all these names. Names I don't recognize. Danny Dimes, maybe a new person. Kingville, maybe. Okay, Girthquake goes Jonathan Taylor. That's going to be a surprise to nobody. Let me go through and change this over to subscriber only for the chat. And really quick, if you have not done so already, please go down there, drop a like on this video, drop a like on this live stream. Nothing helps us out more except, I mean, going and joining our Dynasty Fantasy Football community, getting in a Dynasty League with us, going and checking out our Dynasty Fantasy Football rankings, getting an in-depth podcast, breaking down your Dynasty team, getting in our Dynasty Fantasy Football group chat. I mean, all of that's going to be available over there on Patreon. Y'all can find the link in the description of the live stream. Y'all can find the link in the YouTube comment section as well. And like I said, that's going to be the #1 way you can support this channel, get way more information that's going to help you out in Dynasty Fantasy Football this offseason, and get in a league with us. Now we are on the clock here, and I am about to be panicking because this is the 107. And okay, I think we're going to have, I don't want to call it a panic pick, but we're going to have someone that I know people aren't going to agree with. I don't care too much. And what the hell was that noise? That was disgusting. So here we're going to go with Deandre Swift. I mean, it would have been beautiful to get Justin Herbert falling to us. We're just going to pivot over and we're going to take the running back that's on a rookie deal. That's going to be that new age Aaron Jones, the new age Alvin Kamara. We were talking about this all last offseason. So we're going to grab Deandre Swift because the last mock draft that we did that was Superflex, we decided to take our quarterbacks a little bit earlier, and I just want to test some new things out because, you know, every single offseason, dynasty values shift, and you have to be comfortable going a couple different ways in a mock draft based on where the value presents itself. So in the last draft that we did, we went through and we took a quarterback in the first. I forgot exactly who we went after. I don't know if we ended up taking Dak Prescott. I'm unsure. This time we're going to try it out with one of those running backs on their rookie deals that profiles to be a very productive guy. Scuba says, just got in. Are you doing kickers for placeholders for rookie picks without rookies being a part of Sleeper yet? So we tried doing that on the last stream. And of course, if you get into a Dynasty Fantasy Football League over there on Patreon with us, we are going to be having that where we are drafting kickers as rookie picks. Please understand, if you are getting into a real league with us, we will be drafting kickers as rookie picks. But for this mock draft itself, I want to keep it a little more simple. We tried doing it the last one, and the first kicker got selected in round 6, and that clearly showed that everybody in the draft even forgot that we were doing that. So when it's the real draft and there's real money on the line, then I think we will. When it's going to be this mock draft, I don't think so. And I know people in this draft right now are probably a little frustrated as well that the clock is only 30 seconds. I mean, you kind of saw us, I don't want to say panic with that last pick, but we were scrambling to make it. But I wanted to get a 30-second clock going instead of a 1-minute clock going. Keep in mind, once we get those real Patreon Dynasty startups going this offseason, we'll either have a 1-minute clock or a 2-minute clock. It won't be 30 seconds. You won't have that much pressure on you. But I want to get as many rounds in this as we possibly can. I want to go 14 rounds deep. That way we can be looking at who players are taking later on. You know what I should do? I should run over to Patreon real quick and pull up my Dynasty rankings. We just updated those Dynasty rankings over there on Patreon. And since it's a 30-second clock and since Sleeper does not have a good set of ADP, I need those rankings next to me. Okay, so let's go through. And it looks like we're not going to have time to get those rankings pulled up. Are we taking A.J. Brown here? Let me go through, double check. Let me just star AJ. Let me add AJ Brown to the queue to make sure. Okay, quarterback. Actually, F it. No, we're not taking AJ Brown. We're taking Trey Lance. I know a lot of people are going to think this is a too aggressive pick. I don't necessarily feel the need to continue to go through and explain myself on Trey Lance. With Trey Lance, we saw it with Jalen Hurts this last offseason. I mean, someone that was underrated in Dynasty Fantasy Football based on the rushing upside. With Trey Lance, I mean, he has had over 100 rushing yards through 3 quarters so far his NFL career. The one start that he had, I believe it was 19 carries for almost 90 rushing yards. That rushing upside alone, even if you're Jalen Hurts and you only average 198 passing yards a game, you're still going to be a mid quarterback one in fantasy. And if Trey Lance instead of, is Jalen Hurts level, averaging 198 passing yards a game to the combination of Jalen Reagor, Devonta Smith, and Dallas Goedert, if Trey Lance can bump that up to about 250 passing yards a game, which should be reasonable, knowing that he has a much better coach, a much better offensive line. I mean, the best tight end in football, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel as well. I think that all bodes very well for Trey Lance. This is a quarterback also based on the team investment that he has. If you look historically speaking, he has a guaranteed 3 years starting at the quarterback position. So we're going to take him as our first quarterback off the board here. I currently have Trey Lance ranked in a very aggressive range. Let me go through and pull up our Dynasty quarterback rankings. So, okay, honestly, we need to move Trey Lance up those rankings. It's embarrassing how low we had him. And I know people are not going to like that pick. Trust me, I get it. And I'll say really quick, if you are going to be playing in a Dynasty startup this offseason, you need to understand that in 9 out of 10 leagues here, people are going to have Trey Lance falling to the 5th or the 6th round. So I would not advocate for anybody to go through and decide to take Trey Lance as high as I did, given the fact that, if you're playing in a regular league, you can wait a couple of rounds and get him instead in the 3rd or the 4th. But based on everybody here having my Dynasty rankings, based on everybody here knowing exactly how much I love Trey Lance, not saying he's going to be a better real-life NFL quarterback than guys like Russell Wilson, Trevor Lawrence, Matthew Stafford. I'm not saying that at all. We're drafting fantasy football teams, fake football teams. Please keep that in mind. Fantasy is the key word here. We're trying to score points, and whenever he can come out and he can average at least 60 rushing yards a game, if you do some simple math, like I said, I'm no mathematician, but in my mind, 60 rushing yards a game is about an additional 150 passing yards, and you go through and add on the rushing touchdowns as well. Trey Lance is going to be a cheat code in fantasy football this next offseason. I know a lot of people are going to hate that. Jan coming out says Mark Andrews over George Kittle. Jan, if you wanted to make that argument from a fantasy football standpoint, I would be fine with it. But to act like Mark Andrews is half the talent that George Kittle is with what George Kittle provides as a blocking tight end, and Mark Andrews simply doesn't, that is a laughable take. It's laughable to say that Mark Andrews is a better tight end from an NFL standpoint. Not going to argue fantasy, but from an NFL standpoint and how he affects his offense and his quarterback play, you definitely prefer having George Kittle over Mark Andrews. Okay, so let's go through, find our next tier that we're going to go after. So you got Dobbins and Dalvin Cook going at the 303, the 304. So yeah, AJ Brown was the other player that we were going to consider there where we decided to take Trey Lance. Okay, so here you have Brad deciding to go running back heavy, Najee Harris, Saquon Barkley, and Antonio Gibson. Okay, so let's pivot this over. Russell Wilson off the board. We're going to go back-to-back quarterbacks here. We're going to be taking Deshaun Watson at the 307. Another pick that I know a lot of people are going to hate. With Deshaun Watson here, yes, there's a real concern that he does not play this upcoming season. But a big thing is that concern is already baked into this price that we are getting at with the 307. I mean, with Deshaun Watson, if you knew he was going to play, this would be a quarterback that's going right next to Justin Herbert. If we knew Deshaun Watson was going to play, he would be someone that we were taking at the 107 instead of the 307. So the risk is already baked in. We've seen Deshaun Watson pretty much every single year that he started be a top 3 quarterback in fantasy. So I think from a super flex standpoint, we have a ton of upside with our quarterbacks here. And like we said, we have that running back in the 3-down role. And Z Moving coming out says, get Derrick Henry. If we were talking about a redraft format, I'd be completely fine with Derrick Henry here. But to go through and to take Derrick Henry over someone like Deshaun Watson in a dynasty super flex format when Derrick Henry is going to be 28 years old, honestly, I think that'd be laughable. Jaden says, I'm sorry, are we talking about real life or fantasy world? We're talking about impact that he has in the quarterback position. When we say that Trey Lance has the best tight end in the NFL, for him to be able to go out there and be a successful NFL quarterback, I'm not saying that that tight end is going to be the best receiving tight end in the NFL. I'm saying that he's going to make the largest impact on his offense. I mean, by going out there and increasing offensive efficiency, you see this every single week. I mean, throughout the entire past 3 years, if George Kittle is ruled out that game, you actually see the Las Vegas line moving more than you would see for any other offensive skill positional player. You've seen that line shift 2.5 points with George Kittle being ruled out for the 49ers. I think that it's safe to say that and how that affects the offense for Trey Lance. Kurt says, how many games do you think Watson plays in 2022? I think it's way too early to say. And I think if Deshaun Watson does play 16, 17 games this upcoming season, that this team's a league winner. If he plays no games, well, sucks. Looks like we're going to have to go through. Looks like we're going to have to punt. It looks like we're going to have to go productive struggle, earn the 101 in the 2023 draft class, and bring in Bijan Robinson. Okay, so you got Stephon Diggs at the 401. And given the fact this is a 30-second timer, I need to do a better job of, instead going through and looking at the live chat, going and looking at our dynasty rankings. Okay, so Diggs, Clyde Edwards-Helaire at the 402. And in Dynasty, I'm going to be a lot more willing to just go through and punt the running back position. Like if this was the 2022 Best Ball League, then I'd feel the need to panic and possibly reach on a running back a little bit just to get that guaranteed production in. But in a Dynasty Fantasy Football League, instead, I'm just going to primarily and almost exclusively just focus on value throughout the entire draft. Okay, so I think we're probably going to end up taking Godwin here. Waddle's already off the board, I'm assuming. Is Waddle not off the board already? Okay, Jalen Waddle is not off the draft board. Hopefully, I am not overlooking anybody. This is a 30-second timer, but it looks like we're going to be bringing in our wide receiver 1 here. Let me go through and look at the rest of the draft board to let you know if that was a mistake and if we would have gone with anybody else if we had the full minute or two. Okay, so no, I think that at wide receiver, yeah, Jalen Waddle was definitely the best receiver on the board from a dynasty fantasy football context. If Chris Godwin didn't just tear his ACL, I think you can make the argument that it would be Godwin. At running back, Jalen Waddle versus these options. Obviously, if you want to build a win now team, you could consider Derrick Henry or Austin Eckler. But here with how we've constructed this roster with a lot of youth and with a lot of long-term upside, and we also have a lot hinging on the fact that if Deshaun Watson doesn't play this year, this team's going to straight up lose. I think it probably incentivizes us to go out there and chase some youth. You know what? Y'all know I am a massive Justin Fields hater. Screaming that Justin Fields was one of the most overrated players in Dynasty Fantasy Football when he was going, in the early second round of startups last offseason. But to see Justin Fields fall this far, I think if we would go back and look at this pick again, if we did not already have 2 quarterbacks here, there would be a real consideration to decide to take Justin Fields. I think that I have to have Justin Fields in Dynasty in particular over both Derrick Henry, Aaron Jones, and Austin Eckler, to be completely honest. At tight end, Kelsey still available as well. Kelsey is obviously a great option. This is not a tight end premium startup. If it was a tight end premium startup, I would definitely be saying there's no reason at all for someone to go through and to take Derrick Henry, Aaron Jones, or Eckler over Kelsey. Okay, so let's pivot this back over. Okay, Rockley says J-Rob is still young and undervalued by the Dynasty community. The issue with J-Rob is Travis Etienne's going to be there next year. And with Travis Etienne, yeah, James Robinson's still going to have a very large role, but it's going to be very similar to what we said about Deandre Swift this last offseason, that Travis Etienne will be the running back getting targeted out of the backfield and possibly also getting touches in the red zone. So if he's getting all the valuable touches here, I mean, he's going to be that new age Aaron Jones, whereas, I mean, James Robinson may be that new age Jamal Williams. And you want the Aaron Jones, you want the guy getting the valuable touches in his own backfield. Okay, so we need to really pull up our dynasty rankings and try to figure out who we're going with next. I think we're about to go with Justin Fields already went. At quarterback, we don't necessarily need to reach on a quarterback here. I would say that Mack Jones is probably good value. I believe Mack Jones is still available. Is he not? Yeah, Mack Jones is still available. I don't know if we're going to go with him. However, Miles Sanders goes, yeah, I'll say you cannot be taking Miles Sanders here. Even if you don't have a running back just yet, I think you have to be taking Mack Jones over Miles Sanders. Definitely. Now, this pick's going to come down to T. Higgins and Mack Jones for me. Yeah, it's definitely either T. Higgins or Mack Jones. We're going to take Mack Jones. We took Mack Jones way too early in the last startup draft we did. We ended up taking Mack Jones before Matthew Stafford, which I talked about at length, was one of the biggest mistakes you can make, going out there and overrating age and the impact it plays into the quarterback position in Dynasty. But now we're getting Mack Jones in the 5th. Instead, I think this is a very palatable price point, knowing that, I mean, Mack Jones does have a pretty high floor based on what we've seen so far as rookie season. And like I said, if I wasn't going to take Mack Jones there, instead the pick would have been most likely T. Higgins. I don't think we could have ended up going in the direction of Darren Waller if this was a tight end premium format. Of course, Darren Waller would be the best option to go with. However, I think that given the construction of this team with very young assets in Deandre Swift, Jalen Waddle, Trey Lance, and also, needing to have the flexibility to punt this next season if Deshaun Watson does miss, I think it probably incentivizes us to go with Mack Jones over the older option in Darren Waller. That's why I was also considering T. Higgins, because obviously he's another young core piece. Okay. So Brandon Ayuk at the 5'10". I think Ayuk at the 5'10" is completely fine. Going back to me taking Trey Lance here in the second round, y'all know there's nobody that's going to be a bigger fan of Trey Lance from a dynasty fantasy football context than I will be this offseason. Now, I think the issue in Trey Lance starting for the 49ers, however, is I'm not coming out here and saying that Trey Lance is going to be one of the best quarterbacks in football. I'm not saying that he's going to be a better quarterback in the NFL than Trevor Lawrence, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, Matthew Stafford. Like, if you're talking Matthew Stafford versus Trey Lance passing yardage, if we're talking passing volume, Matthew Stafford's going to run laps around Trey Lance. The reason we're taking Trey Lance here is based on the rushing upside that he has, which we saw this with Jalen Hurts this offseason. With that rushing upside, you don't necessarily go through and support a ton of passing options. I know Lamar Jackson got up there with Mark Andrews and Hollywood Brown this year, but if you're looking at Jalen Hurts was a mid-quarterback one, and really, you had no consistent options in Philadelphia. So I think Trey Lance starting is, I don't want to say going to limit Brandon Ayuk, limit Deebo Samuel, but I don't necessarily think it's going to be a good thing. Okay, so let's go through, figure out where we're going next. We're not going to take a quarterback any longer. Let's go over to running back. There are two names that kind of stand out. It is what it is. Okay, so I think we're going wide receiver. Yeah, I think we're going to end up going with a receiver that I definitely underrated this last offseason. We're going to go Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown, Michael Pittman are ranked neck and neck for me at the wide receiver position. I wonder where we should have gone. With Hollywood, I know that he has trailed off with his production over the past month or so, but if you're actually looking at the volume that he's been getting in Baltimore, it's been a very consistent 10 targets a game plus. He's still getting double-digit targets every single week. If you're looking at our wide receiver rankings, we had Hollywood Brown, and then after Hollywood Brown, Michael Pittman. We have them both over Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen, and Mike Evans. Y'all know I love those wide receivers historically. The issue is going to be the age. I think we honestly probably need to bump up Mike Evans. Actually, we're definitely going to bump up Mike Evans and move down Amari Cooper since we had the Chris Godwin injury. But yeah, we have Hollywood Brown all the way up at wide receiver 20. I mean, to go through and to look at the production that we've had this season with Hollywood Brown, I know that we're going to get Rashad Bateman coming in next year, most likely taking a step forward. But remember, Hollywood Brown was someone drafted in 2019. He's still extremely young. Not only is he very young, but at the same time, he averages 15.9 fantasy points per game this year. I mean, he was identical to CeeDee Lamb. He averaged more points per game than Mike Evans. I mean, he came out there and averaged 0.2 points per game less than Jamar Chase. I mean, so I think with Hollywood, this is a fine pick. I don't think it's too exciting, but I definitely wanted to go with the younger wide receiver here, and Hollywood Brown is 24 years old. Okay, so now we got Jacobs, Ezekiel Elliott's. Let me know if y'all think that Hollywood Brown pick was bad. I think if we were going to go through and take that back, I'm not going to take a running back here. I know that we only have one running back in Deandre Swift, but I'm completely fine only building around one running back, knowing that we have all offseason to go through and try to identify those buy low targets. Also, of course, you're going to get the running back class coming in this season. I would actually try to avoid those guys that we don't know what their situations will be looking like as the season progresses. I think you could talk me into the fact that Hollywood Brown may have been a bad pick. But if we were going to go Hollywood, I don't necessarily think I would have instead pivoted over to Jacobs, Zeke, or James Robinson. I think the pivot would have instead possibly, I don't think we're going to go quarterback either. I think really the only switch we would have made is going with the wide receiver that we may get coming back to us. Allen Robinson at the 7-3. I will say for a fact that Allen Robinson pick is very bad. That is a very bad selection. I know he is on the franchise tag right now. I know he will be in a better situation this next offseason. But to take Allen Robinson there at the 703, I can't get behind. With Leonard Fournette, Fournette looks like a great value in the 7th here compared to the other veteran running backs that went a little bit earlier. So Pittman goes right before us. Okay, so Pittman going before us, we're going to have to find a different option. Let's pull up our Dynasty Rankings. I think we may be pivoting back over to a running back. Yeah, Michael Carter goes. So if you're looking at our Dynasty Rankings over there on Patreon, you're going to see that we have Michael Carter and this other running back ranked back to back. And yeah, I was actually going to be put in a little bit of a difficult position if Michael Carter was going to fall to us. But I think once Michael Carter goes, there's going to be one running back left in this tier for me. It's not even really going to be close. We're going to take A.J. Dillon here at the 707. If we're talking about A.J. Dillon in the 7th versus Aaron Jones in the 4th, I'm definitely going to prefer the value that we're getting with A.J. Dillon in the 7th. If we weren't going to go here, I think possibly we could pivot over to a wide receiver instead. I don't want to say the wide receiver that we would be going after. Actually, everybody in this league right now is a part of Patreon, so everybody here already has my Dynasty Rankings. Claypool would have been one of those wide receivers we would have considered. Yeah, this Allen Robinson pick is so bad. And of course, I'm sorry to sound like an ass. I just think that there are multiple different ways I could have gone. I think instead of Allen Robinson, you could have taken a wide receiver that was significantly more productive this season, as well as also is younger at the same time. You could have taken someone like Michael Pittman, or when you only have one quarterback here in Kyler Murray, it would have been a good idea as well to possibly go with Tua Tagovailoa. Rashad Bateman at the 7-10. That would have been the wide receiver we would have taken if we did not want to take A.J. Dillon here. That would have been the wide receiver we were going after. Okay, so Danny says, are there rookie picks in this? No, we will go through and we'll have our real Patreon Dynasty Startup drafts with kickers as the, oh my God, I just noticed this player's on auto. God dang. Please do not join these drafts if you're going to be on auto. Please do not do that. That just ruins this 112. But yeah, whenever we do our real Dynasty startups this offseason, we will definitely go through and we will definitely have those kickers as placeholders for rookie picks. But as of now, in this mock draft, I wanted to keep it simple. We are just going to avoid that. Okay, so let's pull up our Dynasty Rankings really quick, figure out where we're going next. You know what's funny? If you look at our Dynasty Rankings right now, we have Leonard Fournette ranked ahead of Aaron Jones. Like, I really think that if you're going to go with a veteran running back that's going to be productive right away, but doesn't have much long-term value, might as well wait until the 7th round here instead of going and paying up for like the Dalvin Cook tier. Okay, so now let's find. The issue is this ADP is so messed up. Like, you cannot be drafting off a sleeper ADP right now. Of course, this ADP will get better as the offseason goes on. But as it stands, yeah, we're never going to be looking at running back. Okay, so we need to figure out what wide receiver. Gallup would have definitely been in consideration here. I mean, with Michael Gallup going to be a free agent this offseason, I think you could see Michael Gallup land in a pretty nice situation. Okay, so there's one receiver that stands out to me. We just got to make sure that there's nobody else that we're going to be passing up on. Okay, we're going to panic. The other receiver that we would have considered here would have been Rondale Moore, but I didn't necessarily think that we were going to be able to scroll back up to Rondale Moore before the clock hit 0. Let me see where we have Rondale Moore versus Hunter Renfrow in our Dynasty rankings. Yeah, we have Renfrow ahead of Rondale Moore. Okay, we have Renfrow at wide receiver 31 in our rankings. We have Hunter Renfrow directly behind Kadarius Toney, Chase Claypool, Rashad Bateman, and Jerry Jeudy. James says, when are you thinking the first startup is going to be? Okay, so a big thing, if you are waiting over there on Patreon to get into a Dynasty startup, just full transparency here. In 4 days, I'm going to Mexico. So whenever I get back from Mexico, I'm going to have a lot on my plate, given the fact that we run 20 Dynasty Patreon leagues already. So my number one priority is, once we get back from Mexico, which should be the second that games are ending up, we're getting back that Sunday. So we should know the champions of those Flock Dynasty Patreon leagues from this last offseason. We should know that on Monday. I need to focus out that entire week, making sure that I get everybody who won money. I need to get them their money. Of course, that's going to be my number one priority. And then after that, my number two priority is going to be collecting league dues for people that are currently in Flock Patreon Dynasty leagues. We're probably going to have that as a 2-week process because we go to Mexico on the 27th. And then I also head back to Mexico on the 13th. No, I head back to Mexico on the 8th. So I get back from Mexico on the 2nd or the 1st. I think we get back from Mexico on the 2nd. And then we go back to Mexico on the 8th. So I'll be there for a week. I think in that week, we'll go through and we'll be making sure that we get all the league payments out. And then I'll be sending out notifications that league dues will be required probably by the time we get to about January 15th, around that range, mid-January. And then once we have league dues required, I'll be able to see all the Dynasty orphan teams that we will have available over there for people to join on Patreon. And then we'll probably have to spend a week or two going through and getting those teams filled for those orphan teams on Patreon, doing dispersal drafts and everything. So to be completely honest, it probably will take about a month for us to begin getting new Dynasty Patreon leagues on, because I mean, I have to prioritize those leagues that are already going, because I can't be starting new leagues if we can't manage the current ones we have. Okay, so we got Zach Ertz at the 901, Kirk Cousins at the 902, Sutton at the 903. Okay, how long? 30 minutes. Zach Wilson at the 904. Okay. Let's go through and figure out where we're going to go. Brady at the 905. Pollard. We may end up going QB here. No, we're just going to take Rondale Moore. I mean, with Rondale Moore, of course, he definitely had an up and down season, but a big thing is Christian Kirk's going to be a free agent this offseason. Not only is Christian Kirk going to be free agent this offseason, but AJ Green only signed a 1-year deal this past offseason. So I think that there will be a lot of targets available in Arizona this upcoming year. Jan says, going up against a big dog squad with Devin Duvernay in it, I'm cooked. My man, RIP. RIP, you should cash out now. I'll buy the team off you for $250. Melvin Gordon at the 910. I honestly really like our team. I know people are going to hate our team. It is what it is. I mean, here we have at running back, Deandre Swift, AJ Dillon, receiver, Waddle, Hollywood Brown, Hunter Renfrow, Rondale Moore. So, of course, we're not necessarily strong at either one of those positions, but the elite quarterbacks here to hold us down in that super flex format. And I think we should have a lot of long-term value with this roster as well. DJ Chark at the 1002. A big thing with DJ Chark is I'm completely off of him. I think with DJ Chark, given the fact that you're looking at him as a wide receiver that is now going to be on his third coaching staff, I think it's a stretch that DJ Chark ever becomes anything. And I will say right now, this round is proving why my Mack Jones selection was horrendous. This round is proving that. Jared Goff, the 1004. Yeah. We need to go through and we need to revisit that Mack Jones pick. This is back-to-back drafts that we made the Mack Jones mistake. I mean, we made the Mack Jones mistake last draft that we did in the middle of the 4th round, and we acknowledged that as a horrible pick the second that we made it. Here, I was thinking that we got some solid value on Mack Jones and he fit the roster construction. Remember, the other player we were considering was T. Higgins. But now to look at the quarterbacks that are going to be available in this round of the draft, I think to get Daniel Jones here, like if you're taking Daniel Jones after Ronald Jones isn't signed to Tampa next year. Ronald Jones could be a running back 3 where Daniel Jones is going to be a starting quarterback most likely. I mean, newsflash, if anybody hasn't been paying attention this offseason to the dynasty rookies coming in, this quarterback class ain't that strong. Like, it'd be very surprising to see if the Giants were able to find a replacement for Daniel Jones. So I think if we could go back and look at the receivers we would have taken here. The receivers available to us: Julio Jones, Odell Beckham Jr., Laviska Shenault, Tyler Boyd, Jalen Reagor. If we're comparing these wide receivers to T. Higgins, there's a massive gap. Let me know what y'all are thinking. Also, Pat Freiermuth here is great value. I mean, for Pat Freiermuth to fall behind DJ, I prefer Freiermuth over Ronald Jones, DJ Chark, Melvin Gordon. This Mike Davis pick is complete trash. It's an auto draft team. This is an auto draft team, so please ignore that. Yeah, and another thing is, I know a lot of people for Jacksonville with DJ Chark and Laviska Shenault, everybody's going to come out and say, oh, Urban Meyer's gone. Hallelujah. This is going to be a great situation. I mean, everybody's going to produce. Trevor Lawrence all of a sudden is going to be a top 10 quarterback. I said this at the beginning of the season, and I want to stand by this. I'm selling low on Trevor Lawrence. I get a couple things here. Trust me, I understand that with Trevor Lawrence, 90% of the blame, I agree with you, 90% of the blame can and should be placed on Urban Meyer. But with Lawrence, he has been laughably bad. And yes, I get it. DJ Chark gets injured. And yes, I get it. It was a very bad situation for him to step into. But can we acknowledge the fact that it's going to be hard for this situation to get turned around automatically by going through and, just replacing Urban Meyer? The perfect example is the quarterback 1 and the quarterback 2 in the NFL draft this past year are Zach Wilson and Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence here goes in the 2nd round, whereas Zach Wilson goes in the 9th. And with Zach Wilson, this is a quarterback that has a 5.0 adjusted yards per attempt mark, and Trevor Lawrence is right there tied with him. They're neck and neck. If you're looking this season as well, Trevor Lawrence, 9 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. I think you have to be worried. And I know Lawrence was one of the best quarterback prospects to ever come in. I don't know if I'm taking Lawrence in the 2nd. We'll talk about some quarterbacks that I would prefer. Ramadree Stevenson, good pick here. Let's go through and let's find out what we're going with next. Yeah, I think we're probably going to end up just taking... Do we go Hunter Henry or Irv Smith Jr.? Let's go Hunter Henry. It is what it is. Maybe this is the bias with me with Hunter Henry coming out and having this massive week this past week. But also at the same time, we do have Mack Jones to get that stack coming in. And if one of these auto drafters doesn't come back this next round, I'm going to be completely honest with you, we may have to shut this draft down. Getting guys like Chris Carson going at the 10-11, getting Mike Davis going at the 9-12. These auto drafters are just ruining the draft at this point. It sucks. I wanted to get through 14 rounds. I think maybe this is my mistake trying to do this at 2 p.m. on a Thursday. Maybe it's a better idea to keep these to about 6 p.m. That way people are fully off of work and nobody decides to join during the lunch break and then go right back to work and leave us all screwed. So let's see if B. Petway comes back from his lunch break, or whatever the hell he's doing right now. Let's see if he comes back. Yeah, Bilbis is now an auto draft as well. I'm sorry. I think we're going to have to go through, and I think we're going to have to probably end this live stream here. I will show the top of the draft board because obviously with the top of the draft board, here all these people were here to make the picks. But I think that should be it for this live stream. We can't be drafting with 4 auto drafters in here. That is just horrendous. And of course, please go down there, drop a like on the stream if you have not done so already. Go join the flock on Patreon. Over there on Patreon, you can get into a Dynasty League with us, get access to our Dynasty Rankings. I mean, get in mock drafts like this with us. And you better not switch over to auto draft and get in our Dynasty group chat, get an in-depth podcast breaking down your Dynasty team by yours truly. There's a ton of stuff you can find over there on Patreon. I think that should be it. You can find the link in the description. You can find one in the comment section as well. Thank you. And if you were on auto draft in this, I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. That should go without saying, to be honest. But thank you, everybody.